Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Bullony Basketball. As you can see, I'm here with the one and only GabeSlidIn. How's it going, my man?
Hello. It's been going good, man. First episode recorded from the new setup, as they say. And I've been locked in on some ball. I was definitely quite a casual during the regular season. I wasn't locked in. My team wasn't good, but postseason came around and I've been here, man. I've been here, so I'm ready to talk.
Hey, we've all been there with our individual teams being bad like all season long. But yeah, this is back in another setup that I was in. The last couple episodes, I had to kind of rearrange some things. I didn't move like you, but like I had to switch things up around the place and stuff. So it's good to be back in this space for this one. But the conference finals just ended, and we're here to recap what just happened. We're here to talk about what's going to happen in the next round, and I think we'll start off with the West because I feel like you might have a little bit more to say about a certain someone in the East. And just the Western Conference Finals, the Thunder beating the Timberwolves in 5 games, 4 games to 1. The Thunder won both the first 2 games pretty easily. The Timberwolves won Game 3 very easily. And then Game 5 was an easy Thunder win. I think Game 4 was probably the closest one, I would say. But just from this series as a whole, what do you make of really both sides of this? The Thunder winning, getting to the finals for the first time since 2012, and then Minnesota falling short 4 games to 1 in the conference finals for back-to-back years.
I really think the Thunder just showed who they were. I mean, going into this postseason, they were pretty much far and away the best team in the league all season. And I mean, that defense is stifling. I think, you can see where Denver gave them fits, but at the end of the day, Denver had the best player in the world. So going into this series, like they were favored, they should have won the series. I mean, I think the Timberwolves probably could have pushed it a little bit further, but I think most people probably predicted the Thunder to win this series. I think Minnesota's offense specifically just isn't quite dynamic enough to overcome just the way that OKC's defense crashes down, causes turnovers. Like they were going to set the tone and they were going to play their way. Now, with that said, it was very close to being a 2-2 series. I mean, that game 4, you get a little bit more production out of the star players. You're talking about a different game. Role players play better at home. Minnesota's role players showed up big time in game 4, but I think when they lost that game, that was going to be the nail in the coffin. I don't think there was a way Minnesota was going to win 2 in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that Game 4 was really like that was the most important game of the series. The first 2 games though, it just was kind of demoralizing. Minnesota just didn't look like they competed, and then they came out with like that Game 3 win. I think if they had barely won Game 3, I don't think the Thunder would have, you know, been too nervous and probably would have still taken care of things in Game 4, even easier maybe. But they really had to bring it in Game 4 after they got like literally destroyed in Game 3. And then that's what got them the win. If this was a 2-2 series, I agree with you. I think it could have been more interesting. Maybe could have went to 7. But let's face it. I mean, this series was not super intriguing just because like every game except for that one game was pretty much in favor of one team or the other. I think
Yeah.
what you were saying about the Denver series and how the Nuggets went to 7 with them. It seems like to me some people were saying like how that was like the real test kind of for OKC in terms of like they're maturing like in the playoffs and going against a team that has championship experience. You got players like Jokic and Murray and Gordon and Christian Brown, Michael Porter Jr. Like those guys have won before. And then to overcome them, even though that Denver team isn't quite as good as it used to be a couple years ago, like that was really, I think, what gave them confidence and that they could actually get to this point. You play a team like Minnesota who, they showed their weaknesses last year against Dallas. I know it's you add in Randall, you take out Cat, but even to an extent, like it felt like parts of this playoff run, I would say, not even just this series, like Anthony Edwards, even though he averaged a lot of points, like it felt like he just like took a back seat for like way too long in parts of the game. He would explode late in games or he would explode early in games, but he didn't really have that consistency. I feel like throughout the course of a game that a star player needs to have. Like you need to be showing it like every single quarter. And I think that's, the difference maybe between someone like him and someone like Shea is that Shea was doing it like almost every quarter of this series. There were times where Anthony Edwards was kind of going ghost. I think especially that critical game 4 that they lost, and I would say game 2 especially too, that if Anthony Edwards is playing a better game that he's capable of, this could be a different series. But I think it was going to take like the Timberwolves playing like an S tier level to overcome that. I don't even think the Thunder really played their best in this series, and yet they still were able to pretty easily win this one.
Yeah, I can agree with that, especially not playing their best. I think they just kind of figured out where their strengths were in the matchup and really played to that. Like coming off of that Denver series, I mean, you mentioned Dub was wildly inconsistent. He came alive in Game 7 and got them across the finish line, but a little bit more consistency there from him, from Chet. Just those top guys. If they take care of business, they're probably out of that Denver series in 5 too. So they are just that good of a team if they're playing to peak performance. But them finding ways to win through specifically their defense when they get to that point where some things aren't working. It's nice to know that you can really rest on that, because at the end of the day on offense, like you're going to make the shot or you're going to miss the shot. And sometimes you can get a good look, you can miss. But your defense most of the time should be a lot more steady. So when you can rely on that well, especially to give yourself extra opportunities, it's a game changer. And you saw it the whole series. I mean, I think, and we'll get into it later when we talk about the finals matchup, but mentioning like kind of that takeover of a star aspect, I think, mentioning how Shea is just so consistent. I feel like he always just gets his stuff through the flow of the offense. Like, to me, when I see he rarely gets below like that 30 mark, at least high 20s. But he also is rarely getting over like 40, maybe somewhere in that low 40s range. And it's just because I think he's just so efficient at what he does, but it's without like taking the ball out of other people's hands. And I think you can kind of also see that in a little bit different of a way with Halliburton on the other side. And we'll get there more later as well, but kind of in that way where I think it allows their teammates to get involved a little bit better. I think Ant just needs to find that balance a little bit more. I'm sure that's something he'll work on this season where like either he's involved and he's taking over, or you see a game like Game 4 where the role players, they're taking over, but he's not really able to make his presence known at the same time. I think being able to have that balance and being able to, really just at all times be able to see, which side do you need to take? Do you need to get your guys involved, or is it my time to get a couple buckets and, keep the offense rolling when it gets stagnant? It'll just come with time. He's 23. I have no doubts he'll get there.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that about Shea, because I think, Shea said after a game once, my whole life is consistent. And, like, that's kind of, I guess what we were alluding to, just, like, the way that he is able to get those, it's like, oh, he has, like, 31 points every game. But it's like, you'd rather a guy have 31 points every game probably than a guy who gets 50 one game and then, like, 10 the next, and then, like, 40 and then, like, 15 or something, especially for your star player. I just think the Timberwolves, like, it's, and we'll talk about, the Knicks too, like in this next one, but just with the trade and everything. But I do think that they are in still a bit of a weird situation, even after the trade that they made. I know that was kind of to create some flexibility, like with the salary cap, so that they could bring in someone like Randall to get off Cat's contract. But they're going to be in a really weird situation with some free agents, and then like Mike Conley's getting older. So it's kind of weird to see like which direction they end up going. But yeah, as for like OKC and stuff, I mean, I feel like just with the way the CBA is, like every team's going to have to make a decision like that. The thing that's just, I guess, like scary with them is that like they are kind of like well above or well before they get to that point. That might not come for like 3 years from now or 4 years from now that they have to make a decision like that. And because of that, like now with them already, like I guess jumping over that curve and getting over teams like Minnesota, who was further than them last year, or Denver, who made the finals and won the championship like 2 years ago. Like I think that that's going to make the Western Conference just that much harder, and seeing a team like the Timberwolves, like how they respond to this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think the upside isn't there quite as much with Minnesota mentioning, some people like, I feel like Nikhil's probably going to be gone. Nas, there's a good chance he's gone. It looks like he, last report I saw, declining that option going into free agency. So these guys are going to get money. And I mean, you mentioned the second apron, a team like Minnesota who built themselves the way they did, bringing in guys like Randall, Gobert, these guys on big contracts. It's going to make it harder to keep guys around. And I think that's something else where OKC really set themselves up for that long-term success. You know, you mentioned eventually these guys are going to have to get those extensions. I know it's a couple years away, but eventually they're going to get money. Chet's going to get money. Like, these guys are going to be making a lot. And usually what you sacrifice there is a lot of the role players. So, you know, you just don't have money to pay them. They go get a bag somewhere else. Well, you know, hopefully at some point, some of the guys either take a pay cut, you know, whether it's like Lou Dort got his bag right now. Hopefully he takes a little bit less in the future to stick around since they've done right by him so far. But even if guys do leave, like, you know, eventually Caruso is probably going to be gone. Hartenstein might not be around forever. But having all those picks, and I think this is what they've done so smart. They never cashed in all those picks because once some of those role players leave to get their bag, they can just bring new guys in and just replace that. And, I mean, you see that to a certain level with other teams. Like, Denver's not the deepest in the world, but, I mean, they brought in guys when their role players started leaving. Like, you know, Bruce Brown left, Jeff Green left, all them. You know, they brought in a Christian Brown, got him kind of developed more. They brought in Peyton Watson. He plays rotation minutes for them. And being able to kind of replace that talent as guys are just naturally going to leave because teams don't have the money to pay them, I mean, it just makes having picks important only if you're able to hit on them, though. You can have all the picks in the world. That's the thing about OKC is they hit on these picks. So you know that they will have guys to replace whoever leaves.
Yeah, and they have so many chances that it's going to be hard for them to miss as well. But like you said, too, about like those guys like Naz Reid and Nickeil Alexander-Walker probably are going to be leaving. I mean, you know, shout out our guy Jelson, but people don't want to be in Minnesota. Like, let's not sugarcoat it. Like, the average person probably is not going to want to be there. And just especially if there's money presented to them elsewhere. Like, I just saw a report today saying, like, the Magic are interested in Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I mean, Orlando, that's probably a more desirable place. That's a team that's, you know, young, up and coming. They probably, sooner than later, they're probably going to be in the same tier as a Minnesota, like fighting for contention status. So we'll just see what happens, but I think that that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on as we get into the offseason for them. But but yeah, with that being said, I don't know if you want to move on. We can talk about the Eastern Conference side of things now. Get into the Indiana Pacers and the New York Knicks. You know, they played in the conference finals 25 years ago in 2000. The Indiana Pacers won that series in 6 games, going to their first ever NBA Finals, led by the one and only Reggie Miller. And 25 years later, nothing has changed. The same exact outcome, the same exact teams. And now the Pacers are going back to the finals as a 4th seed. You know, they've already won twice as like the underdog in these playoffs, and they did it again in this one against the Knicks. What do you make of, you know, this series that just happened with them and New York, and I guess just the way that they've been able to, you know, close games and really like respond when, you know, they had a bad game or something like that?
You know, I feel like these teams on paper were very close, and it was like a nice matchup. And at the end of the day, it was a game of runs. Like, you're talking a few runs away from the series being still actively happening. Like, I mean, whether it's, you know, the Knicks 20-point comeback that could have swung it one way, or, you know, the Pacers come back in game 1, which, I mean, that could have made it go like 2-2 coming back to game 5. So this series could have gone a lot of different ways. But I think at the end of the day, the Pacers just outplayed the Knicks when it mattered the most. And you can really see that most on offense. I think a lot of times New York's offense just didn't have a lot going for it. There's not as much fluidity there. You know, it's a lot of Brunson's dribbling the ball for 18 seconds, or, you know, Cat just pulls up for these ridiculous shots when he shouldn't be, or God forbid, I know I mentioned it to you earlier, but like Mikal Bridges' offense is genuinely horrifying to watch to me. Like, the fact that you are, I don't know what his actual, like, something like 6'8", 7 foot wingspan, whatever it is. He's fading away on every single shot. And when you have that much length, you can do like at least like a floater or like finish through some contact because they just can't reach your arms. Like, you don't have to fade away on every shot if you're being guarded by a guy who's 6'3". You just don't. And I don't know where this trait developed from. I don't know like where this stemmed from. I don't know why nobody said anything about it, but genuinely, I think every shot I saw him take the whole series was either a moving three, a mid-range fadeaway, or a fadeaway three.
Yeah.
So you're just not taking quality looks. And it's like, why are you on the fast break or in transition taking like a fadeaway, which is usually a shot you're taking like 20 seconds into the shot clock because you can't get like a better open look? It's just not a recipe for success. And especially, like I've always said, I think the mid-range game is very much still a part of the league. It's so much a part of the game. It's just they don't let role players do it as much. It's usually like your top guy, like Shea, he's taking mid-range. Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, these guys are taking mid-range shots. Yeah. And it's not going to be your guys like, I don't know why it's the first name that came to mind, but like you shouldn't have Harrison Barnes taking a bunch of mid-range shots, right?
It's catching us straight.
Like it's just your role players should not be the guys that are taking those shots, because I know analytically they're less quality looks, but being able to have that in your game when you're getting the attention of the defense is just so important. So with that said, he should not be the guy shooting all these mid-range fadeaways. Like it's just not great shots for them. Even when they're going in, it's not. Clearly, we just saw in the series it's not sustainable, and it leads to those dry stretches, which opens up the door for Indiana to then just come in and be as consistent as they are. Like they don't turn the ball over, so they're not giving up possessions. They're usually getting pretty quality looks. I mean, they space the floor well. Almost every guy on the floor can shoot. A lot of times, the worst shooter out there is Pascal, and I mean, he made them pay a lot. So they were just fluid on both sides of the ball, and I don't even think like the difference on defense was that much. So where it like made up for Indiana's better offense. And the worst thing with New York's defense, like I really thought it was going to become, Indiana's offense versus New York's defense. I thought that was going to be the matchup. But like New York they just couldn't stop fouling the whole series. And we can talk about like, I don't know what the free throw discrepancy was. I don't know. Like I'm not even looking at the numbers, just watching the game. Like they were just committing bad fouls. Like Ben Mathurin just runs towards the rim as reckless as possible, and somehow they foul it. Like, why is he getting to the line 20 times in like 10 minutes? Make it make sense. Like he's not like he's a good scorer and all. He should not be getting to the line that much. Like Karl-Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson. Half the reason they lost this series is because they couldn't stay on the court because they got in foul trouble so much. Especially Cat why is he grabbing somebody's wrists? Yeah. What did you gain from that? Like just these dumb fouls. That killed their defense. Like even if they go through stretches where they're getting stops and Indiana hasn't made a field goal in like 5 minutes, it doesn't matter because they just keep sending them to the line over and over. And it's not phantom calls. It's not refs versus Knicks. They're fouling. Yeah. They're just fouling over and over and over. And it's almost like, can you just not guard these guys? And I get it at a certain point, like maybe you're tired, right? Maybe, Tibbs has his guys out there running 40 minutes. They went to the bench late in this series. Like the last couple games, they were going like 9 guys. I mean, Precious was getting minutes. DeLon Wright was getting minutes. Shout out to the ex-Raptors. I guess they were all getting in the game. But like, I just don't get it. Like, how are you this good of a defense all year? And I know Indy's a good offense. I know they're a good offense, but like, you got to be able to not foul. Like you have some of the best defensive personnel out there. Your defensive wing duo, I mean, there's not that many better defensive wing duos out there. You got Josh Hart out there who's going to play with hustle. Like you got guys who can guard. It shouldn't have been that bad.
Yeah, I mean the bad habits build bad results, as you could see. I think the personnel, like you said, a lot of the personnel is very similar to what they had last year. When they were a pretty good defensive team. I feel like for most of this season, while they still like were in the higher side of things from defensively, like their offense was more of the story. And I'm talking about the Knicks. Like their offense was actually more of their story too than their defense. And it's like that seems odd because, you got Tom Thibodeau, you automatically think like that's a defensive structured team, but they just didn't play that way. And I think that's why you saw like, well, what's the big change from last year to this year? And it was the addition of Cat. And I feel like that they're already kind of like scapegoating his defense as part of the issue there. But like for me, I just think, I mean, I agree. I think the Pacers were better. I don't know what you'd agree. I know you said these teams are close in talent. I think that the Pacers though were the more talented team regardless. Um, I just think that they have so many guys that they could go 10, 11, maybe even 12 deep that the Knicks, if they tried to do that, they'd be in trouble. I mean, guys like Landry Shamet were playing like that's you're done. If he's playing like as many minutes as someone like a Ben Mathurin or Ben Shepherd or TJ McConnell, like that's just not equal in my opinion. Like I feel like they're gonna get outmatched. Just production wise, yeah, he might be a slightly better defender than like some of the other guards on the team, but it's just not gonna work. And that's just one example of it. But I think the Knicks, like, I credit Tibbs for at least using his bench that people were saying he never wants to use. Um, but I feel like honestly, like it's just so weird because I feel like there was so much wrong with this. I think that he could have played Mitchell Robinson more. You saw the last series against Boston. One of the things Boston did is they kept hacking him, and actually, I think the Pistons did it a little bit too, where they would send him to the line and just force him to make free throws. I didn't really see the Pacers do that much at all in this series, and because part of that is they want to play fast. Like when they can play fast, they can play their tempo. Like I think that the biggest thing they were talking about for the Pacers was their pace. Like that's like their bread and butter. And they're not going to want to
They
keep.
played their game.
Yeah, they're not going to keep wanting to foul a guy like to slow down the game. But that might help out the Knicks like to keep doing it until they actually got to that point. And when Mitchell Robinson was in, I mean, there were times he was out rebounding like two or three Pacers, even kind of just grabbing it right over Miles Turner's head and everything like that. So I feel like I almost would have went more with that. I know he's kind of like, I guess historically speaking, he's never been like too much in shape, but I would try to play him as many minutes as possible that you can. Um, the thing that I think that surprised me in this series is, I mean, we knew the Pacers were a clutch team. I mean, we saw that game against the Bucks. We saw the game against the Cavs. Like only 3 times that's ever happened in history of like, I think there's like 2,000 scenarios available, and they have 2 of them, like in the last 2 rounds. So we knew that they were capable of coming back. I think the fact that they did it in game 1, probably the craziest of all those comebacks, was a little bit, quick. Like I don't think we thought it was going to happen something like that quick. But the thing that really stood out to me the most is I feel like the clutch player of the year was not clutch in this series. You might disagree, but I mean Jalen Brunson, like I know he played well for decent stretches of decent games, but like in game 3 especially, like they were getting blown out by 20. He was in foul trouble. Cat was in foul trouble. But part of the reason they came back was he was on the bench. Like he only played like 2 minutes in the fourth quarter. He didn't have a good game really. Same thing really with game 5. He didn't really do much down the stretch. He didn't really have a great game. And just a lot of the games that they lost, like it was someone else on the Pacers that was like really like digging them deep. And I feel like you just can't really have that if you're someone like him. Your team is the favorite. You have home court advantage. Like you gotta be able to close out games like that. And so that was kind of one of the most surprising things to me. And I feel like just as in general, I think the Knicks, especially in the last game, like there was a 14-point lead with like 6 minutes left. It seemed like they were already kind of checked out. Like, do we really want to go back to New York and then win that game and then just fly another day later to Oklahoma City if we win that and then fly back to I think they were just done.
Yeah. I mean, just the thing for me with like the clutch moments, I don't even want to put that all the way on Brunson. I think for me, it once again just goes back to their defense. Like to me, I didn't find myself saying, I can't believe New York missed that shot. Like that should have gone in. Yeah. To me, what it was is they would make the shots to cut it to like 5 points, 6 points. And then Indiana would just keep making shots. Like they just couldn't. I don't think they could string together enough stops to mount the comebacks they needed. They did it once in game 3, but for the most part, it doesn't even matter if you're making the shots because you just can't stop them on the other end. Like I really felt like New York kept clawing to within scratching distance, like because they were in most of these games late. Like they kept it, like they were just playing from behind, but they weren't like down big too often. But with that, like they just could not close the gap because they couldn't string together stops. And if you can't string together stops, you're just trading buckets. Either you're like they're gaining the lead or the lead's staying the same because you can't. And that might just be a testament to Indiana's offense. Maybe they're just that good. I think we'll see. They'll have a much bigger test in terms of like playing the best defense of the league here in the finals. But yeah, like I think New York's defense was, to me, just the overwhelming disappointment. I mean, even if Brunson's not making shots, his defense is still worse than his offense. So
yeah,
once again, it's just like, especially with the Tom Thibodeau coach team, he coached your team.
Yep.
You should be very familiar with this game. The defense should have been much better. Now, with that said, talking about some of these, things that have happened in both these series, I did want to ask you because I think we saw some flash. There was this trade, Cat for Julius Randle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think in both scenarios, like they won game that they won 2 games, but the signature win of the series was Cat having that monstrous fourth quarter and winning them that game. And I think a lot of Minnesota's best moments throughout the whole playoff run was also when Julius was cooking. He flipped the script a lot on his playoff performances this playoff run. So with that said, as of now, who do you think is winning that trade?
Well, I guess the first thing I will say before I answer that is just with the Brunson thing and stuff. I wasn't trying to pin it all on him because I know game 1 Anunoby was terrible down the stretch, and you even mentioned Mikal Bridges, who even earlier this season his jump shot was whack. I think you remember that too, his form and stuff. But it's funny about this trade because I know everyone was talking about it. A lot of people wanted that finals just because of the trade. And when it first happened, I said, this is a lose-lose trade. I don't think there's a winner. That's what I thought. And after getting, now we're in the finals and stuff, both these teams losing the conference finals. This might be a little more bold than when I said it there. I still think both teams lost the trade. I do. and I only say that because this was a good opportunity, I think, that isn't going to be there all too much when you factor in Celtics are injured, Cavs are injured. That's opening up the Eastern Conference. You look at Minnesota, they played the Warriors. I know you're probably one of the biggest Steph Curry fans in the world. Doesn't play. You play a team like OKC, who's never been there. It's only going to get harder to beat OKC. It's only going to get harder to beat Denver when they put players around them. It's only going to get harder to, I would say, beat the Lakers once they get past this LeBron era and they have more flexibility to build around Luka. It's going to be harder to beat the Celtics when they're healthy, the Cavs, the Pacers now, the Orlando, Detroit. Detroit almost beat the Knicks, and they really were. It was
Detroit's coming.
Yeah. So I mean, this is my thing. It's and these are 2 teams who are very financially in a hole. I would say it's going to be really hard to manage that moving forward. And it's not like they have a remotely young team either. Yeah, there's a couple young guys. There's Deuce McBride for the Knicks, and there's Rob Dillingham for the Timberwolves. But these teams in general don't have a lot of young guys to go to. I think that Julius Randle and Cat have both shown it. Julius Randle in this playoffs was actually really good. I'll give him his flowers for this playoffs. But generally speaking, they have shown that they can really disappear in the playoffs, both of them. And they're getting paid a lot of money. And I just don't think that they will really ever break through to bring their team all the way. And I think it's going to get bad soon for these teams. And, the Timberwolves, the one thing they have to hold on to is Anthony Edwards. And they better hope that he wants to be there. That's all I'm going to say. Because if he ever gets to a point where it's I want to go elsewhere, they're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think that almost puts the Knicks at a bit of an advantage because I think the Knicks, everybody they have is pretty on timeline, around the similar age. Trading for Cat, you're bringing him in, and he might be a little older. I don't know. Brunson was in college for a couple of years, so they might not be that far off, but Cat's definitely a little older. With that said, that's one timeline. And I think you're looking then at Anthony Edwards over in Minnesota, and you have Mike Conley's 37. Rudy Gobert is definitely over the hump. Nikhil and Nas are probably about to be gone. I mean, really, almost the only person on his timeline really is like Jaden McDaniels. It's like those two.
Yeah.
And everybody else who's on the timeline might be gone. I guess Dante might be around for a while, but Terrence Shannon Jr., he's on their timeline. He actually impressed me a lot.
Yeah.
But they've got a lot of guys who are a lot older. And I mean, like usually when you surround like your guy with some older players, the window's not too long. And once that window's over, you end up like the Bucks. Look at where they're at right now. They had some older guys around Giannis, and they won the ring. I mean, they capitalized on their window, but now on the back end of that, like Middleton's gone, Brook Lopez is over the hump. Like they're on the decline. So you just got to take advantage of it while you can. And mentioning just the inconsistencies on both sides, like it's hard to imagine them getting over that hump because, as we mentioned with OKC, the consistency is key. Whether it's Shea or their defense or whatever it may be, like if you are riding off of an inconsistent foundation, it's going to be very hard to string together 4 series wins in a row, let alone 3 series wins in a row. So, I mean, I think both players fit their new teams a little bit better. Like, I wouldn't want Julius Randle as a power forward next to OG and McHale down there. And I think with, Minnesota having kind of Gobert for defense, Nas for offense, they didn't really need a more expensive, slightly better Nas. And Cat, I know games aren't the exact same, but generally speaking, kind of not great defensively, great offensive center. It just made sense to have them in their new situations. But due to some of those inconsistencies, I think, like you said, it might make it a little hard to get over the hump.
Yeah, I guess if you want me to, I guess, give like a certain answer, one or the other, I would say, I guess the Knicks have a better path for the short-term future, just because you look at the East next year. I mean, Jason Tatum's probably not going to play at all next season. If he is, he's probably not going to be playing like normal minutes. And then I'm looking at the other established teams out there, like with veterans that have, consistently been up here at the top. You got like the Knicks, the Cavs, and the Pacers. The Cavs, I mean, we just saw the way they lost. I mean, you would like your chances if you're the Knicks, like going against them in the playoffs, being that they haven't really done anything either. As for the Pacers, I mean, like at least they've shown that they won't like back down against them. They don't like fear them. Like they've lost twice to them, which stinks. But they still at least play hard every single game. Like that's the one thing I guess I can give them. Minnesota, it looked like they kind of packed it in against OKC, and I just feel like there's maybe more teams that are going to pose a specific threat for them in their own conference than the Knicks, like in the East. That's, I guess, what I would say.
I feel like the East just gives, like, people just sleep on these East teams so much. And I guess we'll see if once the finals pass, maybe they were right. Maybe the haters were right to not view the East teams as great. But, I mean, I don't think anybody a month ago would have been like, oh yeah, the Pacers, one of the established like great teams of the East, but they went out there and proved it.
Yeah.
Who might like? I feel like you really never know who's gonna come up, and anything can happen, man. Anything can happen. If you said this finals was gonna be, if you said this conference finals was gonna be OKC and Minnesota and New York and Indiana. Brother, nobody's believing.
Yeah.
So I think people always have a chance, but yeah, I mean, there is a lot that has to fall into place. Like, I think of a team think about Philly. Like, we're talking about the top teams in the East right now. Philly should be in that conversation, but you know why they're not? They ain't done it. Yeah. Because they just ain't done it.
Yeah. That's true. I think, though, the only other thing I would say that hurts the Timberwolves is I think the randomness of seeding. And I say that because last year they were the 3rd seed, a game away from being the 1st seed in the West. And it's not like they had a terrible year, but they had some ups and downs, and they were sitting in 6th. The team that won the West last year didn't even make the playoffs. So, I mean, like, this is how it's, I guess, like, so random just with the West. And, like, you don't know who you're going to play. You could draw a hard matchup. I think, I'll stand by this. I think the 2nd and 3rd best teams in the West this year played in the first round. And it was the Nuggets and the Clippers. I think that if either of them like played the Thunder, that would have been their best matchup. And we saw Denver take them to 7. I think even if the Clippers played them, I mean, I'm not saying they'd go to 7, but I think they would probably go to 6. And I feel like compared to any other team in the West, maybe you would have the best chance against them. So that's just kind of my point.
I'd say Golden State over. I think I'd say Golden State over the Clippers. That's just me though.
Well, you are Mr. Curry, so I'm Mr. Kawhi, you're Mr. Curry. But anyways, I don't know. I think that it definitely could. The dominoes maybe need to fall a little bit better for the Timberwolves. But either way, Timberwolves don't matter right now. The Knicks don't matter right now. The two teams that matter are the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers. I know you're a big Tyrese Halliburton guy. A lot of people are counting out the Pacers, being that this Thunder team won 68 games, one of the best regular seasons ever. And they've pretty much dominated every team except Denver in the playoffs. As for the Pacers, they've haven't even gone to a game 7 yet, which the Thunder can't say. But, the Pacers, some people might say like, oh, it's a fluke run, it's luck and this and that. Do you think, what do you think's going to happen in this NBA Finals series?
Well, there's a couple angles you can attack this from. I'm going to give you the short answer first. I think it's going to be the Oklahoma City Thunder in 6, maybe in 5, but I would say it is closer. I would feel more confident saying 6. I think Indiana is a real team. I think it's very clear now that it's not a fluke. I mean, they've won 5 playoff series in 2 years. I don't care who you're playing. And they play some good teams. They beat a 64. They beat in this playoff run. They beat the second best player in the league, even if Sporting Cast wasn't great. They beat the 64-win Cavaliers, and I'm not gonna lie, even when the players were all in the lineup, they were still winning that series. But then they beat the Knicks, who have been hot. The Knicks just beat the Celtics, who everybody thought was gonna go pretty far. So, they're legit, and I think they also their matchup against OKC is not a bad matchup at all. Looking at how OKC won a lot of these games, especially, we know their shooting is their weakness. So how are they overcoming that? Getting extra opportunities. You don't need to take threes if you're getting just more shots up. You're getting more twos. Then they're getting possession. So at that point, it's like when you get a team like Indiana that just doesn't turn the ball over that much, it kind of takes away one of OKC's superpowers. And we'll see if, OKC is able to crack this offense or, if Indiana is able to crack that defense. I don't know which way that turnover battle is going to go, but that's going to be huge. And I think if Indiana is who they've been playing as, that's a good sign for them. I think also thinking of how OKC got here, I think it's pretty clear that I think the fact that Indy can run 5 out, I think that will also be good against their defense as well. Them having a guy going against Jokic, I know Jokic is not Miles Turner, but Jokic being a guy who you can, you have to respect from the perimeter, I think that just did a lot to open up Denver's offense against them and also help against that defense. So I think there are a lot of things that go in Indiana's favor. They are just a raw, better shooting team than the Thunder as well. So there's a lot of things that go in their favor. So I think a lot of it is going to come down to OKC's offense versus Indiana's defense. And I think with the inconsistencies of Dub and Chet in this playoffs, that opens the door for Indiana to take some games. And do I think they'll be inconsistent enough for Indiana to take the series? No, because as I mentioned before, they have that consistency and they have the depth with their defense. With Shea just being automatic with their bench guys, somebody's going to bring it, whether it's Caruso, whether it's Case, and somebody's got it. You can't expect all of them to be bad at the same time, especially at home. So they just got, I think, too much for Indy to handle, but there are a lot of things that play into Indy's hand for them to make it competitive.
Yeah, as much as I think a lot of people are rooting for the Pacers, I think that the likeliest outcome is that the Thunder will win. And I think it's really tough. You said 5 or 6. I think I'm kind of in the same boat. I would probably say 5, just because I feel like there's going to be one game in there that really hurts the Pacers. And it's like if they got that, it could have been different. I think it's almost going to be like similar in a way to the Timberwolves series, except those other games that the Thunder win, there's going to be a lot more closer ones. Maybe one game where they just blow them out. But I think that all those other games are going to be really hard fought by the Pacers. I don't think they're just going to like throw in the towel. You know, the biggest thing is, and you kind of said it early, is the rebounding. That's really the difference maker. If honestly, like you look at Chet and you have Isaiah Hartenstein out there, and then they have guys who are just crashing the glass at a high level. I mean, like Shea's a pretty good rebounder even for a guard, but Lou Dort, Alex Caruso, like Cason Wallace, like they just have so many dudes. Aaron Wiggins, like these guys are gonna crash the glass. And the fact that everyone's going to crash the glass for them, when I just watched a team who had double teams, triple team box outs against Mitchell Robinson, and they couldn't keep him off the glass, that should be a reason to be concerned, I would think. You mentioned the second chance points. Like, yeah, they might not be as good of a shooting team. They might not have as many shooters as the Pacers, but getting those second chances and just getting open looks from passing the ball, like that's the other thing too. Like, Isaiah Hartenstein, we know he's a great passer, but especially when he gets a rebound, he might look at the basket, but he also might find the guy who's like wide open in the corner after that. Like those are the plays that matter the most. I think sometimes like and it's natural for a lot of bigs, once they get the rebound, they feel like they have to put it up. That's one of the things I think that frustrates me with the Cavs, just because like their bigs do that a lot. Like they automatically put the ball up instead of looking for the open shooter, and the Thunder do that really well. And I think that that's really going to hurt the Pacers, who even in this series, it's against the Knicks, and even in the Cavs series, it's not like these teams weren't getting open threes. Like the Cavs, I think, shot 26% from open threes against the Pacers, which was kind of an anomaly because they shot like 40% on the season. So the Thunder are going to get a lot of open shots. It's just a matter of if they hit them or not. I think that, naturally too, like they probably hit the least amount of or lowest percentage of them against Denver. That's why that series went longer. But I think guys like Lou Dort, guys like Jalen Williams, guys like Chet, maybe who have shown inconsistency shooting the ball at times, like those are the guys you're going to have to maybe force to shoot. Like you got to try to limit the amount of time. Like Shea is going to get in the paint. He's going to take mid-range shots, of course, but you got to try and limit that. And you also just, it's really hard too. The other thing that's going to be hard for the Pacers is the Thunder can play like at their pace. So the Pacers have to play better at that pace than OKC, who's also played at that pace. I remember they said something when Denver was playing them, and like Christian Brown kept running up the floor, and they're like, well, he's pretty much the only player that can match the speed of the Thunder. And so now we have two teams that do that, except one of them is maybe more well-rounded defenders around, SGA and Shea himself, but also they rebound like a lot better. And I think that that's really going to hurt the Pacers. And I'm hoping maybe that they can just have some more voodoo magic, as people were saying, and hit some crazy shots. What was it, like 11 for 11 to start that first game against the Knicks and stuff, and then they hit their like last 10 shots or something. Because I think that would make it a more interesting series if they go on runs like that. But it's also going to be harder against what is a better defense and what has really probably been the best team all year.
Yeah, the Pacers fight, man. Like I think even if it's a shorter series, I think there will be close games in there because they just don't die. Like these comebacks, it doesn't just happen like spur of the moment. Like they don't just decide to be a better team. They just keep at it. They keep at it. They keep at it, and eventually they string together a few possessions and they're right back in the game. So I struggle to think the Thunder will just mop the floor with them. I think, like you mentioned, the physicality, the rebounding, that might be one of the most lopsided factors. But even then, like they find ways, man. Like they played against the Cavs Twin Towers, and they made quick work of that series. They're out there against a physical force like Giannis. They made that work somehow. Like they find ways to get it done. I don't think they're gonna get it done 4 times, but I think they can get it done twice.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think, but to me, and it's going to be, I guess, dumb in a way, but I feel like this series, the most important game might be the first game of the series. Because I feel like if the Pacers can win that, then even if they lose a game two to the Thunder, they'll be able to respond. Maybe they get this to a 2-2 series because the Thunder have kind of let up a little bit on the road, in the playoffs. I mean, we saw them lose a game to Minnesota. We saw them lose a couple games to Denver in Denver. We even saw them down 20, 30 points almost against the Grizzlies before Ja got hurt in the first round. So I think that on the road, like, the Pacers will be able to get one, but if they can get that first game, maybe they can bounce back in game three to get a 2-1 lead. And I think if it can get to 2-2 going into game five, especially with the Pacers coming off a loss, it's going to really amplify the energy because, you're 2 wins away from a championship. The Thunder might be the better team, but the Pacers might have a little bit more drive because of what just happened in the last game. And I think that those last 3 games or 2 games, whatever it be, would be really interesting. So I'm hoping that's kind of what happens. If the Thunder go up 2-0, I think it's going to be really hard for the Pacers to win. I think they need to at least win one of the first 2 games in OKC.
I would agree with that. I think they need to make them, the Thunder need to feel the Pacers. They need to enforce their release a little bit. If it's 2 games of the Thunder are playing their way and they don't have to adjust to Indiana, it's the momentum will just start rolling. And you see how it is with OKC. Once they get the momentum off that defense, then the shots start falling, then they're up 30. So the Pacers have to play. They have to play their way, for lack of a better term. And it's just that they got to be confident in who they are because I think what they've done, they've overcome the odds a lot. And I think they have no pressure in this series. Everybody's picking OKC, just like everybody picked the Knicks almost. Everybody picked the Cash.
A lot of people picked the Bucks. Yeah.
I think people have just been counting the Pacers out repeatedly, which goes in their favor. I think OKC, though, I think Mark Dagnall's not going to let them take them lightly. It sounds like he's a bit of a maniac, so I don't think they're going to overlook them. But I do think there could be some surprises in game 1, like you said. If they can steal that, Denver stole game 1 just barely, and look how that ended up. That series went the distance. So, that's big, very big. Indiana stole game 1 by a hair against New York, and it ended up being a 5-game series when it could have been 2-2 going back into the Garden. So
yeah, that was really the difference because if the Knicks win that, theoretically it's 3-3. So I just think, the only other thing I'll say, and then we can move on to the final part, but both these teams have lost 4 total games in the playoffs, but none of them have been back-to-back. So every time the team has responded with a win. So that's interesting to me, though, just because it's if we do get that, I guess, level of hunger from each team after they lose, that would mean that this thing is going to 7. So we'll see. I think we need to, we're due for another good finals. It's probably been since, Celtics Warriors went 6 games, but I feel like a lot of those games were not super close, except maybe game 1, game 3-ish, and game 4, I believe. Game 4 was kind of the turning point. I think that was Curry's big game. And then the Bucks Suns. So it's been a minute. I'm hoping that this could actually be a competitive series though throughout. So
yeah, 2021 was probably the last great finals. I think it's just been so lopsided the last couple of years because it's one Cinderella story comes out of one side, and it's kind of looking like that again. I think nobody really expected the Mavericks. I think nobody expected the Miami Heat for sure in 23. There's always that one team that is how did they get here? And that's kind of the Pacers. So hopefully they break that trend. But yeah, I think just because things are so matchup based now in the way the league is these days, it should be a lot better. I think looking at those other 2 series, you weren't really looking at anything that Miami did or that Dallas did besides having Luka Doncic that was they might actually give the eventual champion problems. This feels I think there's things you can say that go in Indiana's favor and have some real credence about it.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it goes. I mean, I think it would be great if it's a longer series, but only time will tell. If you want, we can move on to the little mini game to end the show here. I call it the Round Robin Roses mini game. So as you know, I've had your counterparts, Devin and Reek, on the last 2 episodes, and I've given them the same mini game, although I've given them, different questions, just to see if you guys, like, how well each of you guys do on it. Now it's a different round, though, for each of you guys. So I had Devin on for the first round recap, so his was based on the first round. I had Reek on for the second round. His was based on the second round. So yours is based on the conference finals, and how this mini game works is I have, Derrick Rose, his points per game average for the one time he made the conference finals, which was 2011. In that series against the Miami Heat, he averaged 23.4 points per game. So my question is, I'm going to have actually 8 of them, 8 players from this year's conference finals, and I'm going to give you the player's name. You got to tell me if their point per game average in this year's playoffs was higher or lower than Derrick Rose in the conference finals of 2011.
You said the number was 23.4?
23.4. And all the points per game averages are based on the conference finals too. So it'll be specifically like for Thunder players against the Timberwolves, vice versa, Knicks players against Pacers, vice versa.
Okay, so it's just their stats in this series.
Correct. So not the playoffs. I think I might have said playoffs like at one point. So
Okay.
But with that being said, are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's get it going.
All right. So the first person, we'll start off on the Thunder side of things. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, was his scoring average in this series higher or lower than Derrick Rose's 23.4?
Mr. Consistency was definitely higher, man.
Well, we were saying he's good for about 31 every game. He averaged 31.4. You are correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So because there are 8 questions, I got 2 players per team. So the second question, it's based on his teammate, Jalen Williams. Was he higher or lower than Derrick Rose's 23.4?
He had that one game where he was really clutch, but I think overall the series was pretty short, and I feel like he did have a couple games that weren't great in there, so I'm moving under.
So you're going under?
I'm going under.
Well, it's a good thing you did, because he was under, yes. Yeah, so he averaged 22.2 points per game in the series. So, yeah.
Oh, close. Okay.
Yeah, it was close, actually. It was only about a point away. We'll see how you do on number 3 here. So are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Number 3, moving over to the Timberwolves, we got Anthony Edwards. Is he higher or lower?
We mentioned notably that he scored a lot of points this series. And even though he had a couple games where he wasn't shooting a ton of shots, I think he did score more than 23.4 per game.
So you're going to go with higher then?
I'm going to go over, yes.
Okay. That is incorrect. It is 23,
really?
right on the dot. Yep.
Wow, that's shocking.
Yes, he was a little bit lower. So that's tough. But he had that one game. I think really it was game 4. He had like 16 points or something. It really hurt him. And he didn't really have, I guess, any big games. I think even his biggest game was the blowout, so he kind of didn't play as much. So we got number 4, though, his teammate. Can you bounce back here with Julius Randle? Was he higher or lower?
He got some bad games in the series. Like, there was one game where I think he quite literally had like 6 points. Because of that, I'm going to go under.
And you are correct. It is
if
under.
Ant was under off a 14-point game, yeah, I was going to say, if Ant was under based on a 14-point game, yeah, Randall was under.
Yeah, you are correct. It is under 17.4. So, yeah. All right, so number 5, though, we'll see how you can do here with the Eastern Conference Finals MVP, Pascal Siakam. Is he higher or lower than 23.4?
I think Pascal Siakam averaged like 24.8. So I'm going to go over.
So you are correct. It is over. And you are correct. It was 24.8. That is crazy.
Yeah. If you ask me Halliburton was like 21.8 or something. So Halliburton's under risk.
All right. Didn't even have to get to question number 6. You just gave me the answer, and that is correct. That's exactly what I was going to ask you next. So, all right. So you're 5 for 6 right now. Number 7, though, Jalen Brunson. Is he higher or lower?
Brunson has some games in the high 30s. Because of that, I'm going to say over. I think he didn't have any games that were like big stinkers.
And you are correct. It is over 30.7. So
nice.
All right, and then the 8th one, last one, we got Karl-Anthony Towns. Is he higher or lower?
This is one that I've really not been looking forward to. I feel like Cat has had a lot of like 24-point games. Like even his monster fourth quarter performance, I feel like was like he had like 4 points going into the fourth quarter or something. So I think because I can't remember him having like some crazy astronomical game, I don't feel good about it, but I'm going to go under.
So that is incorrect, actually. It was also 24.8. So that puts you.
Yeah, he was close.
He was close. So that's 6 for 8. Now, I did do this before on the others, but I'll give you a chance at redemption on specifically the ones you missed, Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns. So are you ready for this?
Let's do it.
So your chance of redemption is, both these guys have played in the conference finals before, most notably last year. And so I will give you credit for both of them. If you can, tell me if their last year scoring average was higher or lower in that conference final series than Derrick Rose's 23.4. Now, they were playing Dallas, remember? So between Edwards and Cat, it's the same series for both of them because they only made it once before. Were they higher or lower?
So they won that series, and I don't think Ant was definitely the leading scorer, and I don't think that they win that series if Ant averages less than 23 points per game. So I'm going to say Ant was over last year in the conference finals.
So you're saying Ant was over, and then Cat was...
I feel like Cat is notoriously a bit of a playoff stinker. So I'm going to say that Cat was under last year, and I'm going to say that Ant was over. I'm going to say it was flipped from what it was this year.
Okay. So he switched the roles, reversed it on us, and it's a good thing that you did. You are correct. You went 2 for 2 there. So I'm going to give you the full 8 points. You redeemed yourself.
Redemption.
Good job. And you know what that means?
It was close, too.
Yeah. That all 3 of you, Devin and Reek, walked away here with an 8 points out of 8 possible as well. So
nice. Did they get redemption chances, or did they get an 8 out of 8 raw?
Actually, Devin didn't need redemption. He got all 8. Reek, I think Reek missed 2 as well. I think he missed Anthony Edwards last round, and he missed, I want to say, Jalen Brunson on his second round. But he got both of them after redemption. So, yeah.
Yeah, the 2 that I was off, I don't feel bad about. Like, Anthony Edwards was a hair below, and Cat was like a point. He was like 1.4 above, so it was within 1 field goal a game for both.
They were the 2 closest to the actual value. Actually, I guess technically Jalen Williams was a little closer, but there were some close ones. You still had some good pulls with the Jalen Williams, with the Siakam, the Halliburton, which you got to that before I even asked you the questions, so that was pretty crazy. But nonetheless, 8 points were possible. You walk away with 8 points. How do you feel?
Feel damn good, man. It's about time. An 8 out of 8, can't really ask for much better than that.
Heck yeah. 24 out of 24 for 3-point weekly for Super Mario Hoops 24.
Yeah.
So that's what they do. But yeah, I think it was a pretty good showing once again. And I'm glad we could collab on this episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching. You got anything you want to add before we wrap it up?
Respect Tyrese Halliburton. And I'm going to put this there as a closing thought.
Okay.
Shea, he's a great player. Top 5 in the league. The foul baiting conversations need to stop. Harden did it. Jokic does it. Luka does it. Trey did it. All these high volume scorers, they grift fouls. And Shea gets hella and ones. Hella and ones from mid-range shots. Not even in the paint. So he's taking shots. Sometimes does he fall? Yeah. But so do the GOATs. That's all.
LeBron.
It's true. It's true.
Okay. I'll give you that. I mean, you said Jokic and stuff. I know Jokic is a little flimsy and stuff, but I think it's like a different, like he's more like flopping tendency than like the actual like, I guess foul baiting per se, but yeah, I don't know. Nonetheless, I think it'll be a good finals. If you had to rate this upcoming finals, scale 1 to 10, just how good you think it will be, 10 being the best, what do you think it's going to be at?
I will go 7. And if I had to give it a comparison, I think you will see shades of, funnily enough, OKC versus Miami. OKC last finals, I think they'll just be on the other end of it.
I think that's fair.
Maybe a short series, but tightly contested. Tightly contested shorter series.
I think also, too, I mean, like, there's no, like, so much, I guess, on running through one player, I guess, as, like, Jimmy Butler in 2020, but maybe in a way like that where it's, like, those Heat players around him, like, they're fighting hard, even though it's, like, they maybe are unfamiliar, I guess, with the territory, but we'll have to see how it goes. I think that we're all rooting for a good finals. It's been a while since we've had one, so Adam Silver, if your league is rigged, do it for us. But anyways, with that being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching, and we're out. Peace.